abortion argument. And speaking of movingon.org, they are the ones who are demanding the cancellation of 19 kids and counting. Now, so what they've done is they put out this petition to have the show canceled. So this story is written, again, by the Christian News, and I thank them for bringing that to our attention. But they say, to date, the petition has received just over 200 signatures. Comments posted on the petition website echo similarly angry statements from the pro-abortion crowd. So, well, they've got 200 signatures on this thing, and I agree with everybody's right to dissent, everyone's right to not support something. If they don't want to support TLC because they're pro-life, then that's fine with me. Don't do that. But when you put out a national article about how you want the TLC show to cancel 19 Kids and Counting, one of the most popular shows on the cable right now, it has over 1.5 million viewers, and you only get 200 people to sign your petition. I think you're really hurting there. So it's kind of an interesting thing that this is going on, and that these people are trying to get rid of the show just because Jim Bob Duggar stood up and told the truth. And that's true of any group that stands up and tells the truth. Again, I'm going to give the number out. If you'd like to contact the show, you can reach us at 561-623-9429. Okay, this is one of the arguments that, remember I read some statements earlier in the show, the Negro is not a human being and the fetus is not a human being, both these statements being made at different times by different people, but saying basically the same thing. And also the U.S. Supreme Court said this in the R. v. Wade decision. But again, it has been struck down in my mind already because of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act that was passed in 2004 and signed by President Bush. But let's go on with this story about the fetus is just a fish and the Negro is just an ape. Now, these are very incendiary things to say, so bear with me. Don't anybody jump on me just yet. The next time you hear an abortion rights activist quip that the unborn fetus is not a human being or not a human person or just a fish or more like an animal than a human baby or nothing but a parasite or a disease, please remember that the use of such dehumanizing rhetoric is in no way new to the history of oppression. Such rhetoric has been employed throughout history by those seeking to justify abusive treatment and destruction of vulnerable and unwanted human beings. Native Americans, African slaves, Soviet and Japanese enemies, European Jews, the mentally retarded, and women in general have all been victimized by identical statements and their diffuse deployment and acceptance. At the root of all terminologies of oppression is denial of humanity. So again, we get back to this denial of humanity that we see here, which is being obviously brought up by the pro-abortion groups that that I'm sorry, I had to do something on the computer. I always get lost when I do that. But what they're saying is that these statements or dehumanization is being used every time someone tries to defraud or murder or benefit financially somehow from a weaker financial group or weaker group. I also see this with the employment of illegal aliens in the United States. As far as I'm concerned, the employers of illegal aliens are nothing more than slave owners, because the people that they hire have no rights under the Constitution of the United States of America. In addition to that, they're participating in organized crime, and they are, as far as I'm concerned, should be subject to the RICO statutes, which state that if you're part of organized crime, that your assets can be seized and taken from you. And as far as I'm concerned, employment of illegal aliens is organized crime, and employers as such should be treated as organized crime members. So let's continue on with this abortion argument and the likening it to slavery. Again, we've got that Negro is not a human being, that was by Buckner Payne, and the fetus is not a human being by Rabbi Wolf Kelman. Both these statements have been used to justify the fact that they are not human beings. So we need to be really careful of this. Also, that there was in the Dred Scott versus Stanford decision by the Supreme Court in 1857 stated that the black or Negro people were a subordinate and inferior class of beings. We also see the Supreme Court in the Roe v. Wade decision saying the fetus at most represents only the potential of life. So they're not, what it's saying is that baby is not a real life in there. It is only potential. And the same type of statement is used against the Negroes in the 1857 Dred Scott decision, that they were a subordinate and inferior class of beings. Well, let me jump back a little bit to this gentleman by the name of Buckner Payne. And what he wrote was that basically the Negro is not a human being, and his questions in his book that he wrote were, are the Negro people descendants of Adam and Eve? And he basically said they weren't. Are they the descendants of Ham? And he said basically that they weren't. They were basically a lower evolved or higher evolved species of ape, and therefore they were not classed as human beings, and that they were inferior in that area. Just to show his enlightenment level, just so you can understand a little bit where that goes. Just as the Virginia Supreme Court agreed with the Dred Scott decision in 1858, in the eyes of the law, the slave is not a person. So the Supreme Court of the United States deprived unborn human beings of their personhood when it defined the word person as used in the 14th Amendment to not include the unborn. Now we see this in this Dred Scott decision where they referred back to the 14th Amendment. And also, we see that same type of downplay or looking down upon unborn children as less than human being or not being protected under the 14th Amendment. Let me just read a couple things. One is the first part of the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So this is the part on the slavery and how this was overturned, and is part of the Emancipation, came out of the Emancipation Proclamation, and was added as an amendment to our Constitution. Then in Amendment 14, the 14th Amendment, it says, all persons, I'm going to read section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So these basically these two arguments in the Roe versus Wade decision and some of these other abortion decisions are basically stating that the term person in the 14th Amendment does not apply to the unborn baby because is only potentially a human life. It is not a human life in the womb. And it is irrefutable, the fact that it is a human life in the womb, and it is definitely given inalienable rights by God, their creator, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is also in the preamble of the Constitution. So let's now look at another law that was passed recently. I touched on it earlier. It's called the Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2004. Now, I know I've mentioned this on previous shows. I'd just like to bring it up again. The Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2004, Public Law 108-212, is a United States law which recognizes a child in utero as a legal victim if he or she is injured or killed during the commission of any of over 60 listed federal crimes of violence. The law defines child in utero as a member of the species Homo sapiens at any stage of development who is carried in the womb. So at any stage of development means at the moment of fertilization of the egg, it is a child in utero, a member of the species Homo sapiens. Now, I don't like them using evolutionary speech to say this, but basically they're using this as the only defining point that they could agree on as to what this was. So this is an amazing law that was passed, and it's saying that the child in utero is a member of the human race, Homo sapiens, and an actual human being from the moment of conception. Well, the Roe versus Wade stands upon and is hanging upon the fact that the child in utero is not actually a child. It has potential for human life. And there is what's called the collapse clause within the R v. Wade decision, which basically says that if it ever is defined in or changed in law that a child is actually a human being from the moment of conception, then basically the Roe versus Wade law collapses. Now, why people and why pro-life groups with lawyers and money and all this aren't pressing this point with the Supreme Court and bringing suit stating that the R v. Wade statute has been overturned by the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, Public Law 108-212. How can you have one law that states that babies are not human beings in the womb, they have only potential for human life, and then have another law that states that babies are human from the very moment of conception within the same country, and not have one law be judged against the other? This is beyond me. If you know the reason to that, you can give me a shout right here, right now, at 561-623-9429. And that is, I'm Greg Malone, Human Rights and Justice for All. You can get a hold of me here, and we can discuss this like normal human beings do discuss things. Notice I'm not angry, I'm not mad when I'm talking on here. I'm very, very level-headed, and at least I believe I am. If you think I'm getting out of control, let me know. But I believe by my speech right now, I'm not getting out of control. I'm using pure logic and reasoning, which is a critical thinking skill that is not taught within our society to these days. Had a gentleman on the other day. We talked about critical thinking skills and proper reasoning and teaching techniques within our schools. But this reasoning and these arguments that are being made are very important. So we just went over the Virginia Supreme Court, the Dred Scott decision, which